Mike, sustainability is often seen as a balance between three things: environmental concerns, financial concerns, and social concerns, all of which architecture can have a role to affect. So from that framework, what's your perspective on sustainability?
Yeah, so sustainability in architecture can mean a number of things to a number of different people. I don't see sustainability as simply looking at the LEED checklist. I think sustainability goes beyond that. And for me, looking at architecture and the various topics within architecture through this lens of hip hop, often look at hip hop as being this influencer for a number of different things in architecture. So when we talk about sustainability, hip hop is sustainability. All right, from the clothes that we wore that may have been too big, right? You got your big brother's clothes or your big sister's clothes, but you rocked them and you made them look fashionable so that you didn't stand out or get picked on, right? You made it into a fashion that everybody else around you started wearing their clothes bigger, even though you were wearing hand-me-downs, right? You made hand-me-downs dope. And I think that architecture can learn from hip-hop a number of things around sustainability, whether it's reusing materials or making something that is sometimes a challenge, something that's exciting.
Great. What do you see as the greatest barrier for inclusiveness in architecture?
I think the greatest barrier is being able to define what diversity means. I think diversity means something different. That's my same answer for the last question too. But it means something different for everybody, right? So I think that's the greatest barrier. It's understanding what diversity means, and then we can actually attack the diversity problem within architecture. So defining a problem, I think, is the biggest problem.
And on the opposite end of that, what do you see as the greatest opportunity for inclusiveness in architecture?
Yeah, so if you look at architecture with the dismal percentage, which is what, 3% or less of all architects in the United States are African American. So that means everyone is experiencing space from predominantly one perspective.
Right.
All right. So inclusion in architecture gives everybody an opportunity to see space in a way that we've never been able to experience it before. So as diversity in architecture increases, so will our experiences and perception of space.
Great. So you've spoken a lot about the relationship and correlation between music and architecture. And do you see this mostly as a way to communicate with a larger audience and create awareness, or could music also be in itself inspiration in architecture?
Music is a way to bring awareness to architecture, but it's not just celebrating the greatness within the profession. Hip hop is a way of giving voice to the voiceless, right? That's what hip hop was all about. It's like the kids in the hood who didn't have a voice, they found their voice through music, and I believe that music gives voice to some of the unpaying end users of some of the spaces that we create, so we can hear their perspectives, right? That music, especially hip hop, is always critiquing urban spaces. That's what hip hop is. So on one end, it's a way to amplify the people who use our space and hear what their opinions are. But on the other end, it's a way to make some dope architecture, right? So architecture has always been inspired by, whether it's art, religion, architecture has always been inspired by culture. And hip hop is undoubtedly the culture that reigns supreme over any other culture. It's reverberated around the world. There's no place in society that does not emulate hip hop. And I think architecture is the last untapped art that hip hop has yet to create.
So that being said, how do you imagine the future of the profession of architecture?
Yes, so as we look at the future, my world revolves around hip hop. So I can imagine that the tools that we use in architecture will eventually change. And we'll start to use some of the tools that hip hop artists have used to create and manipulate space. And whether that's, you know, turning a turntable into a mouse, or if that's looking at turning an MPC or a beat making machine, right? Can that be translated into an input device for a computer? I see our tools changing that will allow for that inclusiveness, but also allow for people to bring their genius in the mediums that they speak to, allow them to bring that creativity within, it allowed them to bring that creativity inside of the profession, and again, create spaces we haven't seen before.
So maybe expanding upon that, how do you see the future of cities?
Oh, so I have to say, I just seen the movie Black Panther and the city Wakanda, you know, which was based on this idea of, you know, Afrofuturism. And for me, as our population in the U.S. continues to become more diverse, so will our professions. I always joke at the end of my lectures that I'm creating an army of hip-hop architects. These are young kids who are going to come and right all the wrongs of modernism in communities of color. So how I see our future cities, I see our cities being designed by more diverse populations that take into account not only aesthetics, but some of the issues that somehow or sometimes are housed within our architecture. So I see architects going beyond bricks and mortar and now starting to deal with some of those social issues. So how it looks is not as important, but I see architecture as a way to remedy some of the things besides aesthetics. We're not shooting for the magazine covers in the future. I think in the future we're trying to solve issues.
That's great. That's all I've got. Is that enough?
Yeah.
Perfect. Fantastic.
Oh,
Good
that was
job,
super.
man. You nailed it like the first.